Okay, everybody, welcome. Miles Kessler here. Welcome to the Integral Dojos, to another one of our community calls in our community call series from the Integral Dojo. And this is part two of a two-part series that I'm kind of diving into with my two Aikido brothers. Aikido. Well, I mean, Patrick's an old friend, so he's really like a brother. I feel like Thorsten is somehow a long lost brother that I've only known for a few years somehow. So there was a really nice kind of familiarity there from the beginning. So
that's nice.
Yeah. And then and Thorsten has kind of arranged to have a seminar where we all teach together coming up in about 3 weeks, 4 weeks, something like that.
Yep.
Called the Aikido Session. It's going to be in Frankfurt, Germany. At the end of the call, maybe Thorsten, you can say something about that, or Miriam can say something about it, or whoever wants to talk about it. But what we're doing is we've arranged a couple of calls to kind of warm up the topic and warm up what we're going to do in the workshop, in the live workshop. And we in our last call, it was kind of an open discussion, but it really started to focus around the spiritual phrase from Nisargadatta Maharaj of "I am that," which is a kind of a non-dual declaration. And it was a fascinating topic, fascinating discussion. So I highly recommend that you go back and check that out. It's on our YouTube page. Or on the blog, you can find it. And today, Thorsten had recommended another topic. So I guess without introductions, Patrick, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
We'll just go pass it over to Thorsten and tell us what you thought about opening today.
Hi everybody. I was just thinking 10 minutes before about what we could talk about, and I tried to remember what the last community call, and actually my feeling was, I was talking about that experience running, as I remember this running experience, or sometimes in Aikido, but basically this running experience early in the morning. And so this is this melting experience, being there and here and there, and this there for the idea. And of course, this is an exceptional experience, exceptional way of perceiving yourself in the world. So usually it's more the other polarity, like this I am not, or the idea came into my mind, there's so many things going on, so many entities, so many this world is kind of in compartmentalized in so many ways, so that which is maybe in daily life much more important is the experience that this I'm not this, or I don't want to be like this, all this kind of feeling yourself in, or maybe like you could explain, there is these different layers are there all the time, but in daily life there's so many things going on that you have to always decide to differentiate, and this leads to not to opposition, but this leads to this, being just an isolated part within a much bigger space. And if we are like intuitively or like spiritually not strong enough to keep that I am that, so it falls into parts. And related to the Aikido experience, Aikido training, I think that this is a very, very interesting aspect of, trying to, there's so many things going on when you're training. Maybe you're training a technique or training some ideas, and things are falling apart, and then you're staying on that, focusing, like that's my experience, focusing on this I'm not this. Then, just as a starter, just as an idea, these two ideas. Don't want to talk too long. Maybe wait for the others, what you are thinking about that.
Hey, Patrick, you want to take it?
Well, what I think I hear, Thorsten, you're saying is actually linking to another approach within the Advaita Vedanta tradition, and that's the neti, the I am not this, I'm not that recognition of our experience. And I think what's interesting about what we're attempting to do today, and what I feel is the movement in the world of Aikido today, is that in the past, and when we were training in Japan, or back in the day when we were training with our teachers, the approach of Aikido is that you received what the teacher said, or the tradition said what Aikido was, but you never questioned it. Mm. And in terms of being able to kind of access a direct experience of Aikido, we need to be able to approach it in that same kind of direct, contemplative, penetrating experience of what is it, and as you mentioned before, also identifying what is it not, and who am I in this relationship, and where do I want to go, and what do I want to be conscious of, and to be able to say something about what, and in this regard, you know, whether we're talking about a recognition of who we are as a source of consciousness, I am that being, that kind of realization that I am something prior to the body, I'm something that is connected with the world around me, or in the recognition of what is Aikido, and what is truly the nature of Aikido, and what is it not. So I'm not sure, are you referring to exploring this question in relationship to the practice of Aikido, or exploring this question in relationship to who we are as individuals practicing Aikido? Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I would say both. I mean,
okay.
In the first place, what is Aikido is like, without me doing Aikido in that very moment, doesn't make any sense. I mean, you know, in this way, like, when I am in that movement, movement together with somebody else training Aiki, then there is Aikido. But I mean, I wouldn't call nowadays. I wouldn't call it Aikido. It's just talking about reading a book. So only when you're in action, while on all the layers, like physically, emotionally, and let's say intuitively, like doing Aikido, then Aikido exists. It just exists in the present, in the very moment. So I wouldn't disconnect, like, you know, the question, who am I, what am I not, like in Aikido or in the world or in daily life. It's just a way of connecting, a specific way of connecting in life. So Aikido is not a separate thing for me. And I think also this leads to, as if Aikido was something without yourself in that moment, or if Aikido was something which was written here or invented by O Sensei, and then you kind of start to repeat, start to come closer. But this is just not the correct way of experiencing this source. I think we have to open up completely ourselves in that moment, and then doing Aiki, and then Aikido exists. Otherwise, it doesn't exist. That's not a theory. That's my experience, or more and more. So I wouldn't. For me, actually, it's one thing. You know, these two aspects.
So basically then the question is, how do you recognize when you're expressing Aikido, or in sync with Aikido, or embodying Aikido, and how when you're not?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you could. This leads then. What is Aikido then for you? Like, but we could like define it, as an opener, And I'm very interested what the others are thinking about it. I don't want to, share my experience of these last weeks or months. I can do that too. But I think it's a very open. It's a completely. I mean, Aikido is not for me. Like 10 years ago, I was thinking Aikido is something. It's going kind of. There is not enough creativity. There is not enough invention. We are repeating all the time the same things, and it was feeling that Aikido is going down very much. That was my feeling, very practically. And now I'm experiencing and thinking completely the opposite. I think it's every day very creative. Every day, we start doing new things, and that's because of I am totally invested.
Right. Nice. Nice. Yeah.
I would like to hear what the others are thinking about that.
But I think you're pointing to a question which is it's incredibly challenging to articulate that quintessential nature of Aikido and how we are with that. And I do think as a community, and that the attempt to come into a direct experience of Aikido and recognizing what it is, recognizing what it's not, recognizing who I am when I'm there and when I'm and what is not, or what is contrary to that, is a very challenging question. I think, Miles, you know, your work in terms of bringing the discussion online has brought a lot of light to that question. But it still, I think, is a very open-ended question with regards to the larger Aikido community, the world community, on, you know, what exactly is the essential nature of what we're doing, and who are we attempting to fundamentally be as we do it.
Absolutely.
Miles, do you want to comment on that?
Oh, my mic was open. Sorry about that, guys. We have a dance studio downstairs, so there's background noise, and I thought the mic was off. So forgive the background noise. Yeah, actually, at first, I think it's a fascinating topic, and what you said, Thorsten, was really cool. That some 10 years ago, you would look around Aikido, you thought it's you know, there's nothing new, there's nothing creative. It's kind of Aikido's going down, and then something shifted in you, and now you realize that it's abundant, that there's really no, it's kind of, there's a limitlessness to what we can do with Aikido. I had a very similar experience, but if you think back when we started, it was the same. I mean, I think that the techniques have evolved over the years, over decades. You know, I think Aikido has moved someplace, but you know, it's kind of dependent on where we're at. And you know, what you say is, you know, when we kind of remove the obstacles of the self, when we get out of the way, so Aikido can happen. It's a beautiful experience. And when Aikido happens together with some type of technical development, because it can happen to a beginner and they'll have the same kind of beautiful experience. It can happen to an advanced person, they'll have the same beautiful experience, but the expression will be quite different. And it's not Miles or Thorsten or Patrick out there doing it, it's happening through us as a channel. And what I love about this question is it was kind of one of the, I guess, several cornerstone inquiry in my own Aikido development. It happened when I met Richard Moon. Richard Moon's a friend of Patrick and I, and he's an Aikido teacher in Northern California. I think Carl Tissel must know Richard, I'm sure. Yeah. And we were sitting around. I was at a seminar with Bob Nadeau. It was in Switzerland. We were sitting around in the evening. I think there was some drinks. I think Richard had smoked something, you know, as he tends to do. And and then he just asked a question. He said, "Okay, what's Aikido?" He kind of went around. He asked me, and I was pretty. I was pretty in my my achieving Iwama style days, I guess you could say. I was right in the middle of it, but I was still open-minded. I started in a different style, so I kind of came in. I had a little bit of open-mindedness, but I still became a follower of that style, which I think is, you know, important part of the process. If the style lets you continue to grow, which in that it didn't necessarily do it in that context. But then Richard asked that question, and you know, I reflected back, and I guess there might have been a moment to try to come up with an eloquent answer. Aikido is we blend with the energy of the universe, or, you know, something like that. The things that we try to, when our friends ask us and you try to say something about Aikido. But I realized, no, that's bullshit. You know, that's not authentic. And then I just realized, and it kind of started off an inquiry in me that lasted a few years. And then at some point I just kind of got it. It's like, well, what is that? Okay, so let's see what we can take away and see if it's still Aikido. You know, so is it my style? We take away my style. Is it still Aikido? Well, yes, it's still Aikido. I've only got 3 toes on one foot. You know, I was born with 10, but I had an accident as a kid, and I've only got 3. And so with 3 toes on one foot, is it still Aikido? Yep. You can take away those toes, and it's still Aikido. And can I take it if I took away my teacher, and if I took away my identity, take away my rank, take away the Japanese clothes, take away the Japanese words, take away the bowing and the etiquette and all the, you know, all the forms, take all that stuff away, and it's still Aikido. And I couldn't deny that. Yeah, it's still Aikido. So I started kind of get to anything that I can put my finger on. If I take that away, is it still Aikido? And the answer always came up as yes. And you know, this inquiry was really important for me. And in a couple of different ways. You know, one was that my father had an uncle, Frank Kessler. He was a poet, and he had a book of poetry, and the book was called Everything That Isn't Elephant. And it basically came from a Danny Kaye broadcast, where he finished the broadcast. He said, it's easy to be an artist. He was kind of talking to the audience. It's easy to be an artist. He says, so let's say you're a sculpture. You just take a block of wood and you want to make an elephant. All you have to do is take away everything that isn't elephant. Everything that isn't elephant, and then you end up with an elephant. And you know, it just kept going deeper and deeper. And then Patrick and I also had done some work with a man named Peter Ralston, who he's done some Aikido, but he's really well, he has invented his own martial art. He's one of the few true martial geniuses that I have met in my life, and he does powerful inquiry practices as well. And I was working on the questions of who am I, and who is other, and who am I not, and who is other not, and that was my first experience of really like a major blown open non-dual experience through that. And it was pretty intensive, but it came from negation, like Patrick was saying, neti, 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 neti. And on one hand, like Patrick was asking, it was a spiritual practice for me, but on the other hand, it was completely related to Aikido. You know, I was doing those two things at the same time, and it made, I think for all three of us, that's probably why we recognize each other so easily. For all three of us, that was an important part of our martial arts development, is that all three of us have stepped out of our traditions. All three of us have stepped out of the relationships with our primary teachers, our core teachers. All three of us have stepped away from organizations, you know, that we had kind of identified as and with. All three of us have really taken in the Aikido, as a creative person, it's not a risk at all. It's just what we do. But in front of the Aikido community, to start to be innovative and do something that's like, you know, different, you get ostracized. But you know, when you're connected with this, it doesn't matter. And for me, it all started with this kind of inquiry of, you know, what is not Aikido.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny because I just had a conversation with Robert Nadeau Shihan last night. He had reached out, and so we had a nice talk. And I think, you know, what you're pointing to, Miles, with regards to that discovery, that perspective of that non-dual experience, where we go beyond our concepts of what we think things are, and go beyond our story of what we believe we are, and go beyond our memories of who we remember we are, and we come to a direct access. You know, as Thorsten, I think you were pointing out in your experience in running, this kind of deep recognition of something fundamentally larger than my ideas of who I am and what I'm doing, and my ideas of Aikido. And we were both mentioning that, you know, in the movement from at the beginning level, Miles, as you mentioned, there's that capacity to do, and the skill that comes with doing Aikido. And as we do Aikido, we attempt to gather techniques, almost like collecting stamps. How many techniques do I know? How many have I mastered? And how big is my technique collection, my stamp collection? And measuring our understanding vis-a-vis this number of techniques that we know, or how many kumijos am I capable of doing, and all of the things that go with that kind of accumulative practice, and measuring ourselves with that accumulative practice. And I always remember, you know, what that felt like. If I saw a new technique and I never had seen anybody do it before, oh wow, I want to learn that. What is that? They show me how to do that, blah, blah, blah. And rather than coming into that, the wellspring from where that technique came from, the source of where that technique came from, which is also the source of who I am, who you are, who we are. And that source is the birthplace of all technique. And to come into contact with that is a more of an allowing and a recognition of something which is inherent. And when it manifests through my skill, it's very creative. And the skill, the developmental side, is still very important, but the quality of what we do in Aikido is more than just an accumulation of our copied skills from our teachers. It's something authentic, which rises up from each individual. And when it resonates and it's so on the mark, so much at the right place, at the right moment, for the right reason, and you recognize this kind of brief realization, I'm at the center of it all. I'm at the center of it all. It doesn't deny other people being at that center, but there's a recognition of that. And in that, there is a union or a sense of unity with the essential nature of Aikido, and the realization, I think, Thorsten, as you mentioned, that who I am and what Aikido is not separate at that moment in time. And that's a beautiful and very satisfying recognition to have. And it transforms the system, transforms the body, transforms the heart, transforms the mind. It gives meaning to what we're doing, and more than just a martial expression of power, it has wisdom in it. It has understanding in it. It has a level of compassion in it, and there's a certain creative force in that moment that is undeniably unique and much different than the other combat arts that we've experienced in the past. And for that would be that kind of wow moment when Aikido seems so fundamentally critical for us evolving as human beings. It stimulates us to move into that new phase of ourselves in the midst of that pressure and that conflict and that attack. And it makes, for me, seems to make so much sense on all the different levels of the system, and to recognize it as a deep reflection of one's own being is a deeply and powerfully positive experience. And that's why I think, we all say we're in love with Aikido. Not that, we like Aikido or we're fascinated by it. Those things are true, but there is a certain love to the art. And that's, I think, very unique to Aikido as a practice. But I don't know, Thorsten, how is this sounding to you in terms of the
Oh, this all sounds very familiar to me. Like Miles, what you said before, like what this discussion with Richard Moon Sensei. When I look, at the same time, I look back at the thing which was most important to me was when I think we all left this defined space of the in which we were learning, because we had a feeling of this the possibilities, and that space is unlimited, and if you have that defined limited space, you kind of, there's this certain tension, and then some day or some year, some months, this space gets you get that feeling it's too narrow, it's too small, and then maybe the roof is too, you touch the roof of that defined space, and then with that feeling, when I left, the kind of these structures, of course, then there's a certain liberty, a certain freedom then. And when I came back after a year or after half a year, after 2 years, so all the time, of course, that's normal. It's people, they say, they look at you, they work with you like with the image they have in their mind, like me 1 year younger, or me like 2 years before, or like you met somebody like, and then he continues the
old relationship,
which completely, it's completely, history. Yeah. And I said, oh, wow, this is so fascinating. We're all like, this is not, I'm not this story, like, which happened like 5 years ago, or even like 2 days ago. Like it's I am not this. So this relates to that first question. And then, this is all, for me, it was very clear then, when this living in the past, living in or repeating, or like Patrick, you mentioned, like we were collecting techniques like stamps. It's also like you repeat some things, some figures, and this is all collections which are there like static. It's just positions in the past, and to me that was the strongest experience. I'm not that. I'm not this collection of techniques. I'm not this what you have in your mind. This is one very very aspect which drove me out, and then I realized much later that that space, that defined space of the wasa, the techniques you learn with your sensei, it was kind of a safe harbor. It was like a safe space where you could just relax and receive and learn, It was just like the beginning. But the moment I choose to open the door, the moment I just went out, it was the Aiki started. So that was, I have the feeling that, if you walk out of the door, Aiki starts. Your own door starts. And
That's
before
good.
it's like a kindergarten, This is
Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
It's absolutely fine, and it's safe. It's a safe place to play and to prepare. But to me,
but it also has its kind of kindergarten games with the bully and the commandant.
yeah, exactly.
And, the hierarchy and all that stuff.
I'm very fine with the kindergarten. It's not that I'm
Sure.
looking down to it, but it's when you struggle with it, then you kind of feel it's kind of in negative mode. But now I think it's very fine. That's balance. We need that. With that kindergarten or that fence around ourselves in a way. And I'm sure still, it's just the space is larger, it's wider, but the infinite, this endless experience being complete. I am that in a total. This is kind of This could be something too strong. So and then the nature balances us all the time, kind of getting smaller again. And this leads to another question or another idea I have, like this: how to adjust that balance between the infinite, that place where there's no limits, and these human creations, these techniques, these things, which gives us security. And it's just like we need some things to hold on.
Yeah, sure.
Right? So then and I would say this is the Aiki.
Well, Patrick, I'll pass this to you. I just want to kind of because I mean, it's an amazing question, Thorsten, but it's actually, I think it's a really, really advanced question, because you have to, in a way, break free of the matrix, then learn how to be out of the matrix, and you have to learn how to get back in the matrix and be part of the matrix again. Yeah. But that third stage, it's pretty whatever, it's mature. Let's say it takes some time to do that. But I think what we could go there, but I'll pass this to Patrick. We could go there, but I think it's also might be helpful to make a distinction. What is it like to do Aikido in the matrix? In other words, when we're identified as the kindergarten, or as the style, or as the teacher, or as the whatever. And we could criticize. We could use rational criticism to understand what's good and what's bad there, but still, it's a limitation. The fundamental thing is that it's limited. And then what does Aikido look like once we've managed to shift?
Yeah,
because those are not the same things at all. Those are not the same things at all. And maybe we just kind of what do you say, double click here. And Patrick, because I know you got a lot to say about this. What would you say is the distinction between it, just for people who are watching the video, so they could?
Well, I think when we're, and this brings, I think, even a deeper question in terms of introducing beginners and new people into the practice. At what point in time do we start to give them permission to fundamentally question their own practice at their own level, so that we as teachers facilitate that transition for them in a positive way, rather than, in our experience, our teachers held us, were attempting to hold us back. And
well, they led us forward, but when we wanted to keep going forward, they held us back.
They held us back, Right. So they brought us up
for no fault of their own. No fault of their own.
That's part of the context. That's part of the traditional context.
They became Agent Smith.
Well, they were being true to what they had been taught. Even though, I think Go Sensei was a great example of somebody who had done exactly what we're talking about.
Absolutely.
He had broken out of the matrix of traditional Japanese martial arts. He had severed ties with his jiu-jitsu teacher, Takeda, and had opened up to a larger context, and through the encouragement of, I think, Deguchi and his own realization that he became authentic. And I think that Aikido is a movement towards authenticity. It has to be. But how do we balance that recognition of authenticity and the necessity of going through those primary exercises that we experience at the beginner level, and those learning exercises, those developmental exercises. And because we do have beginners coming in, and the last thing I want is to create a soldier. I would rather initially try to promote somebody who's primed to become authentic authentic in the practice from day one, without denying the need for for instruction and framing and all of the developmental processes.
Right, right.
So I think that's a dilemma for us as teachers, but in terms of ourselves and integrating back into the being available to that larger spirit of inspiration and moving out of the belief structure, right? I think for myself, the Aikido is no longer a belief structure. There's no necessity to believe anything any longer with regards to what's going on, and it's all fundamentally apparent. It's evident, and that's that movement for me. That the self-evident nature of the practice, and it becomes an exploration of what is rather than a repetition of what I have learned, and that also was a marker for myself in towards authenticity. I stopped referring to the past as being the source of information of what I was teaching.
Yeah.
You know, you're teaching what is rather than teaching what you heard last year or 2 years ago or 10 years ago or 20 years ago.
Yeah, reaching into your files, your catalog, and again, there's nothing wrong with that. Like you said, it doesn't negate what we're talking about. Doesn't negate that, but that's not really the main point.
No. And I mean, there's always the forms and there's always the tradition, and referring to the tradition is one thing, but letting the tradition be the sole source of the reason that you're teaching and the source of your sharing, the source of your Aikido, for me it feels very stale. It feels very like bringing dead skeletons out and trying to reanimate the dead. And there's a quote, Peter Ralston has that quote, and I'm going to let Miles repeat it because he knows it better than I.
Oh, yeah, which one?
What's the essential nature of being able to take from the dregs of
no, he said the mark of a true warrior, and he meant like a spiritual warrior, warrior in the sense that they're no longer a soldier, but they've liberated, they're like Neo, they've liberated themselves from the matrix. The nature of a true warrior is one who can take from the dregs of the ancients and
distill clear liquids.
Yeah, like extract clear, I don't know if you guys know the word dregs, but it's like when you make coffee in a makineto and the stuff you throw away, those are the dregs, because it doesn't make coffee anymore, it's been used. But a true teacher can take those old techniques and pull out pure liquid. Yeah. And that's and it's you can, the thing is, until you see it, you don't realize, like, oh, now I understand what we're trying to do. Maybe I can't do it, but I can see it. And then once you see it, you're never confused again between repetition of form, which is there's no problem there. It's not problematic, but the repetition of form is one thing, and the free expression of, like Thorsten was saying, Aiki is another.
It's a taste. It's a taste. It's a direct unity with what is, rather than a conceptual grasping of it. And in that taste, it's very deeply satisfying. Where the conceptual grasping, no matter how fascinating it may be, it still feels empty until we get that direct, fundamental aha moment, and then that seems to be everything.
That's a good way of describing it.
Yeah, Thorsten, just one more. I just wanted to say one thing. So we already have one hand up, Renata, and I want to invite anybody else who has any questions or something you want to join in on, comment, then just raise your hand. There's a button at the bottom of your screen that says participants. When you open that, there'll be some buttons on the right of your screen that says raise hand, and that's how you raise it electronically. But if you do that too, we'll probably figure out that you have a question. And then, so maybe Thorsten, you can just make your comment, and then I'll go over to Renata.
I would that taste. I like that. I like that way of describing it. Would you think that it's possible for a complete beginner, like in the first or second session, or class of Aikido, to get that taste?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean,
I agree. Yeah.
There's a karmic factor there. Somebody has to be at least open and willing to do it, but there's no, if somebody's available, absolutely.
And would you think that quality of that experience could be very intense, even though you're a beginner, like a second class? I mean, of course, the way somebody will describe it this way, like if you're like an advanced person, it articulates in a different way. But
If you're what?
the quality of that taste.
If you're what kind of person?
I feel advanced practitioner. So of course it's articulating in a different way, but of course it looks better, greater. Like, let's say the quality of it, that taste, you know, that the quality of that taste could be from the very beginning. It's available. It's a potential which could be opened up. Like it has nothing to do with time. I think this is a very, very important point for me, because I changed completely the way I teach. I teach Aikido because, you know, when I'm doing seminars, for example, I don't prepare, you know, like create steps to get closer to that experience. It's just always available. It's always possible to experience that, or to get that taste. Right. So no matter who you are, how long you practice Aikido, how it just needs to be open. Yeah, that openness is important, and to be you know, to flow within that moment, to not to not being stopped by yourself. So, and this was a liberating experience and thought of, you know, when it comes to teaching, you know, because the whole concept of teaching is kind of changed.
Totally, yeah. Patrick, you know, what do you think about going to the questions now? I mean, we could keep doing this for a whole hour, I'm sure.
But one thing I would just add to Thorsten, I guess for me, the difference between, you know, a beginner or an advanced person having that taste would be that potentially, and that the advanced person would have a greater maturity in interpreting what that taste signifies.
Exactly.
And a beginner would have less experience in understanding perhaps the implications of that taste.
Yeah, the recognition is in the maturity of your view.
Right.
Basically.
Yeah. Complicated. Yeah. Don't want to. You're right. We should invite the others.
No, Thorsten, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, when it's simple movements. If it's too complex, of course you need some maturity. But you know, if an adult person, like with some, you know, history and experience it, I experienced it myself. You know, like I cannot count it. It's more people than 10. Like you said, had that moment of, wow, this is something new, right? This is their taste. They cannot even. It's difficult to describe, to put it into words. But this had nothing to do with their maturity. You know.
Yeah. Right.
When, you know, and it's maybe that was slow working, soft working stuff, but it is possible anytime. That's which was completely new for me, because before I thought, you know, you had to teach. That was how I was taught. Train hard for 20 years and then we talk later.
Yeah. That's one of the problems of the traditional systems. Yeah. Look, in a way, what you're doing is you're opening up a whole nother front of discussion. It's really interesting. But maybe let's bring in, since you're not the joint. Patrick, let me bring in her question. I'm sure whatever she asks, you're going to have, and we're all going to have something to say. Yeah. So, Renata, how you doing?
Thank you for the. I've got two important things you've said in my mind. Yeah. First, that this taste is always possible, but you come more clear about what it is when you are more advanced, I think. I am somewhere in between, more still at the beginner level. I'm struggling very much with the techniques, trying to get them all, and not very far yet. But with me, I've tried now to remember what brought me to Aikido, I know, but what made me stay after the first session. And I think I had one of these experiences in the very first session, yet it was as an uke. And it was fascinating, extremely fascinating. I didn't have a glimpse of what it was at all, but I thought I want to come back. That was clear, because it was a feeling of oneness, and it was this strange feeling. I was put to the floor. I think it was an Ikkyo-Omote. I was laying down to the floor, and I thought, oh, that's exactly what I wanted to do right now. And that made me come back. And I think it was the same kind of experience I'm now really longing for and seeking, while struggling with the techniques and not getting it very often. But this is what actually makes me come back, and what is Aikido for me in a way. I found it again and again since then. Well, it is in the most different moments of Aikido, and sometimes I don't expect it to come at all, and like
well, that's
it
the
has
best
nothing
time.
to do with the training. But, yes, but it was there from the beginning for sure, in a way.
Yeah, sorry I cut you off, Renata.
At first. So that's it.
Nice. You know, I think, Renata, what you're suggesting, where you're pointing to, is also you know, the realization of getting that taste early on, and having then again a number of different tastes showing up. Do you have an experience on how to make yourself available for that taste? What would you say about that?
In a way, yes. I have to be calm and go with a positive expectation and do away with fear. And then there has to be some space. Yes. Like when my partner isn't expecting exact technique, but is simply expecting what I understand as Aikido, then the chance is bigger. And sometimes it helps to feel kind of, I can't express it, but with the word love, to go into a technique with the expectance of giving love instead of anything else. Then the chance is higher.
Yeah. I know for myself, you know, in suspending the desire to repeat the experience helps make space for a new experience that has a taste which is similar but also brand new. And in the past, it would be that desire to want to have the experience again exactly the way it was before. And I noticed that was actually blocking the ability to revisit and re-recognize this great unity and this freedom and that spontaneity in that unity. And upon recognizing that and allowing myself to, okay, I'm not going to try to repeat what has happened, but do what you said, approach it with space and availability, and come from the right place, as you said, love, to come from the right place in the exchange and make space for that to occur. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Renata.
Okay.
Yeah, and if anybody else has their questions, please put your hand up. We'd love to bring you in. Carl or Torben or Miriam or Tom or Hans, nice to see you. Thanks for joining us. We've been having a great discussion. There's Hans Werner as well. Hi, Hans Werner. And anybody has a question, just raise your hand. Thorsten, did you want to say something?
Just Renata, what you said, you know, that one of your first classes, that feeling of oneness, that's so wonderful, because it's such a strong experience that could bring you back, you know, all your life. It's not just a superficial positive experience, it's just something very deep. You know, if that happens, you know, it's such a gift. And in the beginning, to have that relation, like a stronger relation to that, maybe more to the core of the taste of what Aikido experience can bring us. And not just, you know, physical fitness, or was a nice experience, or lovely people, or you know, all these aspects which are also interesting and nice to have, but it's not a strong argument enough to keep us going through time, and which is not always nice and shiny, you know, the Aiki, the path, which if you've got that deep personal experience in the very beginning, I think that's so cool. I had something similar, which I never doubted, I never questioned that first experience. So that actually it was just one experience, which kind of linked me to the process. So whatever happened after that during the years was never you know, strong enough to break that bond, which was created with that one experience.
Totally.
I love what you said, Renata.
That's great. So listen, we have another hand up, and we're coming up to about 10. We got about 11 more minutes left with the call today. So if anybody else has a question, you need to kind of bring your courage up and raise your hand, because we're going to answer Miriam's question. And if no other hands come up, we're just going to talk for the next 8 minutes. Okay, hang on a second. Miriam, your mic. I'm trying to open your mic. There we go.
Hi, hello. I hope everybody can hear me.
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, wonderful. I love this talk up to now very much, and I'm really intrigued by all the interesting things that came up. And I hope to pose a question that came up because on the last seminar when we were in Bochum, Patrick posed the question that you also came up with, that is, what remains when there is no Aikido? So actually, I think, like you said, Aikido happens in the moment, in the doing, in the experience. But and then I also kind of know that actually the action that is happening, it doesn't even matter if it's called Aikido or whatever. When you're in connection with what's happening, then Aikido is happening. But on the other hand, this kind of threw me back to the question of, so am I not supposed to be doing Aikido? I mean, am I not to be doing the practice which we are doing to create the experience we need to continue doing Aikido in our lives? And I know it's not really a serious question, because I'm not going to stop to train Aikido. But I'm not going to stop my training.
Got it, right.
Yeah.
So actually, this is also the question of love, but I'm kind of confused about this now, because I'm really sure I'm going to train Aikido till the end of my life, or till I can't move anymore. And whatever Aikido is going to be then, I hope I don't have to experience this. There will be some kind of Aikido then too, I hope. Or, so
right.
To get my drift?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't have much to say, but I think there's a quote I often tell some students that, sometimes the best Aikido it requires us to stop practicing Aikido. That sometimes doing that, actually following Aikido, requires us to take a break from the physical practice of Aikido. And just opening that as a possibility in my mind realizes that Aikido is larger than just continuing to be on the mat and performing the techniques, that there's something underneath it all which is driving the process further, and that it may require me to take a pause from training and to acknowledge that. For me, it was very liberating and something that I encourage students to recognize, so that they don't get in the trap of feeling that they're leaving behind Aikido if they're not training for a couple of times on the mat, or they need to take a break, or for some reason life is pulling them in a different direction.
Yeah, and just to kind of also use a quote, Patrick, it's another quote which is different than Patrick's, but it doesn't negate at all what Patrick says. It's from Pablo Picasso. I say it all the time. Most of you probably have already heard me repeat it, because it's really beautiful. Picasso said, when you learn the rules like a pro, so you can break the rules like an artist. And learning the rules like a pro is doing the Aikido. I think we're all also about evolution here, that the art is evolving, and the rules that we're practicing, they should become more functional, more relational, more aligned with the principles, more free. They have to change. I think when you do a form, any form, to the point where you are touched, the form and the principle meet. Yeah, and remember, the principle is just a shift. It can happen with a beginner anytime, in all times, all places, all circumstances. Forms, to do good Ikkyo, I got to get a little bit into the future before I can do a proper form. There's the things, the rules that I got to learn. But when the principles and the form come together, the principles automatically impact the form, and the form begins to change. It's automatic. It's automatic. It's automatic to the point, if we take that to a greater degree, you'll never really do the same Ikkyo twice. So again, and that doesn't negate what Patrick just said. But I think that and Picasso was a genius. He might not have had his life together as we would see as a real master, but he definitely learned the rules like a pro, and he was a damn good artist.
I think what Miles is saying is obviously very true, and the point that I think I'm resonating with is, in Japan, I practiced a lot of tea ceremony, Japanese tea ceremony, and the art is a beautiful expression of peace, harmony, a sense of connection in the social context, and a quality of being spontaneously available and being at the right place at the right time in the dynamic of just sharing a cup of tea. And you wouldn't think that tea ceremony is detrimental to the human being, but the teachers that I trained with were so committed to it in the Japanese ethic, in the Japanese practical ethic, that my teacher's teacher could no longer get up and down from seiza because she had practiced so long on her knees that she had destroyed her knees beyond capacity. And my teacher was moving in that direction as well. But
she sat a beautiful seiza.
Exactly.
Problem is she couldn't stand up.
She couldn't stand up. And so there's that ethic which is holding this principle, and they're no longer supporting each other.
Not at all. Yeah.
Because they're destructive to the individual's actual.
Then it becomes destructive.
Then it becomes destructive. And so
perfect way to say it. Yeah.
And Aikido, we have that as well. We have those. We're filled with that experience of destroying our bodies as we explore this principle of creative harmony, and that, I think, is an essential nature of what we need to address for the future and the evolution of the art.
I think it's an evolutionary question. I think we as an art, we're at that crossroads.
Yeah.
And I know you and Thorsten, and we're all asking this question of what the fuck are we doing, really?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, is this an art of, is it an art based on principles of harmony? Then why do we have these destructive things going on? And Renata, look, I'm sorry, we only have 3 minutes left, so we're gonna kind of keep the questions. We're gonna have to close soon, but maybe I thought I'd just pass it over to Thorsten.
Yeah.
And Thorsten, do you have any final words? And you want to say something about our meeting in a few weeks?
I was thinking about it has something to do with what Patrick and you said before. It's just when people get that sense, that taste of, or when they're led by more or less by the principles. Before there was that, maybe that antagonism, learning techniques and structure, the dysfunctional, these mechanics, and then if you get that taste and you think it has nothing to do with it, first, if they think it has nothing to do with the techniques and their physical practice, then some people, they get kind of, they lose their sharpness in training, being sharp in your mind, and being sharp in like in your intuition, and also physically in the way you perceive the internal space, your physical space, and the interaction with the other one. And I think it's just different layers of executing that sense of being straight to the point. What the balance, what the Aiki this moment means. And sometimes when I'm tired or lazy, and I lose that sharpness physically, because I'm able to immediately create a setting in a seminar, or in a training, or for myself, where I get that taste, but I'm kind of getting lazy sometimes, when I'm not perfectly balanced. Do you know what I'm pointing at? So it's very important for me, and also in my training. It's just, you know, it's a new aspect, but you know, to deal with that mechanics and these techniques in a way that also in that layer of, you know, you could say it's a superficial thing, but it's also within this we can find you know, the intuition, the freedom, that taste. So it's everywhere. It's like how do we say? It's like a hologram. You know, you have within the technical physical space.
I love it. Yeah.
You got that freedom. You got that emotion. You got these. You got it everywhere. So that, you know, and therefore that state of being balanced in all these different layers then tends to, you know, that where Aiki is against nothing, it's for everything. You know, it's all these different layers of our physical being, our emotional being, our spiritual being. It's about that balance. And for me, that's the Aiki. The Aiki every moment. It's an every day, every year of our path. So it's not against. Before I was very much, you know, when we're leaving the old structures, you're maybe a little bit because you're frustrated or against, and then you find some new things, and you see it's the same settings, the same questions, the same structures you find your whole life. So it's kind of, you know, finding that balance within all these. They're related. We cannot kind of leave the structures and the mechanical learning behind. We cannot just, you know. Yeah, so was just an association. And
beautiful. Yeah, thanks, Thorsten. And thank you, Patrick. And Thorsten, do you want to say a few words about
actually
Aikido sessions?
Maybe Miriam, you could say some words about the sessions. I mean,
Miriam?
Well, yeah, I can.
The dates, location.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
It's almost sold out.
The seminar is going to start on Friday, the 30th of November. I'm sorry, I just had it called up. At our dojo in Frankfurt.
Is that 7 o'clock? 7 on the 7 o'clock?
Yeah, just let me. I just lost here. At 7 o'clock. At 7 o'clock, and with 3 sessions of each teacher, and then we're going to continue on Saturday at 11 o'clock in another place in Offenbach. That's a gym, a very big gym there in a school. The address and everything you can find on our PDF, which you can download on several places. Maybe the easiest access you can have is when you go to our website, www.aikidosessions.de. There you can download all information, and there are also pages which give you the exact times of training and prices and everything. And if you have not yet, sorry, Hans Werner, I can't hear you, so.
Oh, let's open Hans Werner's mic. Hang on a second. Yeah, Hans, go say again, Hans Werner.
Yeah, just to add, not for the timing or whatever, but since I'm doing the inscriptions, I could already tell you that we have more than 50 people already confirmed and paid to come. So maybe during the weekend or in the next days, during the weekend, there will be also some people which will come without having done inscription before. So we will be quite a lot of people. I think we'll be at least.
Do we have a maximum number?
No.
No,
52. So you got to register now. You're right. Come on, Miriam.
2 spots left.
Bring your friends. You
can buy them on eBay, and
but what, you know, in a way we're joking, but really, the communal space. Of course, for me to work with Patrick and Thorsten, it's just this amazing swimming in the ocean, as Thorsten says. You know, I love to swim with you guys, and when we get a collective doing that, and that's what happens. The group does again, I don't want to open up another topic, guys, but when the group shifts into the collective, it's actually one of the coolest experience that we can have in Aikido. So I'm looking forward to it, Thorsten and Patrick.
It's just one thing to add. If somebody thinks about coming on Friday usually we're not many people. So, and if you need a place to sleep, so you could stay in the dojo for free or in the dojo in Offenbach. So join us on Friday night. So it's a smaller class, and if you think about that, you're most welcome.
Annette wants to say something.
Yeah, I want to say something about accommodation. I already have some hosts who are willing to share a bed with guests from outside. So I think we will be managing, we'll be able to accommodate everyone who wants to join us in a very nice way.
Great. We're going to bring a caravan from Central.
Well, there'll be three.
They're welcome.
Yeah. I have them already.
Great.
Okay. Great. Patrick, any final words?
No, just looking forward to the shared space at the beginning of December. It's a nice way to end the year, and the shared collective inspiration between myself and Miles and Thorsten, I think, will be a very fruitful weekend, and looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Making space for that experience of unity, as Renata had mentioned.
Thorsten, would you like to close us off?
Just want to say thank you for that call and for these beautiful ideas. And of course, the real thing is when we meet on the mat. And I'm really looking forward to it and to see you all.
Yeah, me too. Great. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody who joined, who's watching the calls later. We will do more community calls in the future, and I'm sure that Patrick and Thorsten will be included somehow, somewhere, sometime. But until then, thank you all for joining us, and wishing you all a great day, great practice. And
okay. Thanks, Miles. Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Take care.